With a new Dragon Ball film scheduled to be released in December of 2018, the question on everyone's mind is what could we expect to see in this upcoming film with the origins of the Saiyans having to be explained. On today's video, we will be diving into a conversation and discussing the upcoming film in terms of placement and what we expect to see in terms of antagonists and seeing our heroes return on the big screen. So buckle up tight and hold on to your seatbelts because we're going to be discussing the upcoming Dragon Ball 2018 movie next. If you are new to this channel and enjoy what you see, then don't forget to punch that subscribe button and turn on all notifications by clicking on the bell icon to receive new and daily content on your mobile devices, desktops, and services that I provide, along with following me on these social media platforms to stay connected with me at all times. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now let's begin. December 2018 is going to mark the beginning of a brand new introduction to the origin of the Saiyans, as we're going to find out firsthand as to potentially where the Saiyans come from and how they came to be. And joining me here on today's video to discuss the future of the upcoming film is Dragon Ball YouTuber and good friend SuperSaiyanPaul. Now Paul, I wanted to talk to you about this film because there is literally nothing known about this film as of this recording, but all that we know is that it is confirmed that we are going to see the most amount of Saiyans that we've ever seen in a film be showcased in this movie. Now, what I find interesting about this is the headline, the origin of the Saiyans. Now, what I wanted to ask you is, in terms of timeline placements, where do you see this taking place? Do you see this more or less taking place before the events of Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball, predating all the way back to ancient times and seeing how those Saiyans came to be and seeing where they originally stemmed from in terms of spreading out into Universe 7, into Universe 6? Or do you possibly believe that we're going to get some sort of a connection in tying in both Universe 7 and Universe 6 together, considering that Universe 7 did once house a plethora of Saiyans before they were eradicated by Frieza, and now in Universe 6 we understand that there exists a planet where Saiyans currently reside? And what I wanted to ask you is, where do you see this taking place in terms of timeline? Do you see the Universe 6 Saiyans being involved? Is this going to more or less only showcase Goku, Vegeta, and company? Because to me, if you're going to have a story involving the origin of the Saiyans and quoting and saying that you're going to have the most amount of Saiyans ever shown before, it only makes sense for them to incorporate the Universe 6 Saiyans, which also include Kale, Caulifla, and Kaba, alongside potentially many others. So in terms of placement, what are your thoughts on that? And in terms of an opposition, who do you see opposing these Saiyans, and what do you think the story would be like?
So I think it's going to be taking place after the events of Super.
Really?
A lot of people, yeah, because it's going to be featuring the most amount of Saiyans ever.
You're right,
and
yeah.
With that being pretty much confirmed at this point, with them all saying that's going to be the origins of the Saiyans and stuff like that, I think it's going to be taking place in Universe 6. And remember how we were always getting hints towards the Sadala arc?
Yes.
I have a feeling, rather than that being the arc after this Tournament of Power, since the Tournament of Power is going to be the end-all, be-all for Dragon Ball Super, the series for now, they're going to take that arc and put it into this movie and just feature all of these Saiyans in probably one of the most action-packed Dragon Ball Z movies we've ever seen, Dragon Ball Super movies we've ever seen, because with the Dragon Ball Z movie budget, it's just insane, the animation quality. And with that many Saiyans on screen, I think the threat is going to have to be bigger than ever. It's just going to be something amazing to see all of these Saiyans unite. Goku and Vegeta finally uniting with the rest of the Saiyans after how long has it been? Their entire lives, basically, besides if they do count Bardock's movie being canon or not, which most of the movies are not.
Right. But I mean, in terms of time placement, you see this taking place after Super. I mean, which is interesting because we're going to get more of an involvement with the Saiyans from planet Sadala and the king, King Sadala as well, because it's interesting because the king of planet Sadala, his name is actually King Sadala, as was Vegeta on planet Vegeta. But the thing is, what's most interesting about this film is the title, The Origins of the Saiyans, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of us want to know, what is going down on planet Sadala, how those Saiyans come about, because we understand that the Saiyans from Universe 6 are very different than the Saiyans from Universe 7, in the idea that their ideologies are different, their ways about life are different, possibly their culture. So I feel like seeing both the Universe 7 Saiyans and the Universe 6 Saiyans you know, culminate together in one film would be spectacular. In the idea that I don't think that we're gonna see the resurrection of the Planet Vegeta Saiyans that, you know, resonated in Universe 7, just because, number one, I don't think there's any need for Planet Vegeta to be restored. Even though many people would say, well, Vegeta had moved on from that, Vegeta doesn't really look back on his people too much, but now he more or less, you know, resonates with Universe 6 because those Saiyans are currently alive and they were never eradicated to begin with. So I feel as if Vegeta has more of an interest in the Universe 6 Saiyans, considering how he saw Kaba and how he was introduced to Kale and Caulifla. But let me ask you, so as we go into this film, right, how do you see the story being explained as to the origin of the Saiyans? Like, do you think this is going to predate back to where, you know, they were first created, like the very first Saiyan people to ever, you know, come about from that, you know, lineage, from that bloodline? Do you see us going all the way back to where we get to see the beginning of the Saiyan tradition and the Saiyan people, or do you think that it's more or less going to culminate in a sense to where it's the evolutionary process of the Saiyans? For example, there is a huge evolutionary process between the Saiyans that we saw from Planet Vegeta to the Saiyans that we saw on Planet Sadala, which include Kaba, Kale, and Caulifla, to even Goku and Vegeta. Obviously, Goku and Vegeta becoming Super Saiyan gods, even though they weren't the first, Yamoshi was the first, seeing how they transcended even past that into Super Saiyan Blues, fighting with gods, doing everything they could, you know, transcending even past Super Saiyan, breaking past Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3. There's a clear-cut evolutionary process between what Goku and Vegeta had achieved in comparison to the original Saiyans of Planet Vegeta and even arguably Planet Sadala. So as we go into this upcoming film with Takahashi having to be behind it, which you already know the animation and the artwork is going to be amazing, in terms of, you know, placement, you say that this is going to take place after Super. How far after Super do you think this is going to take place in terms of, like, depending on what happens in this tournament? Of course, we're still in February. Like, do you see it to where Vegeta visits Planet Sadala and finally getting to meet the king and finally getting a better understanding as to how the people are over there? Or do you see, like, an entirely different story coming about to where he doesn't go there, but more or less the message relays in just a basic outline similar to Bardock's story as to what the Saiyans used to do back in the day and how they came to be? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I have a feeling that they're going to end up going there because it's a very, very good chance for them to explore outside of their comfort zone, which is planet Earth.
Right.
And kind of similar to, I hate to bring it up, but like the Broly movie, how they went to that planet and Vegeta thought he was going to be taking over that one. It's similar to that, just moving to like another place in scenery and having Vegeta get introduced to some new characters. It's going to be cool to see Vegeta put his pride aside, because if he's going to meet the king and stuff like that, I feel like they're still going to be viewed as his underlings because they're still really strong fighters, and if he can train a bunch of them to go Super Saiyan as easy as they did in this tournament,
right,
it would be rather interesting to see him help like flourish the new wave of Saiyans. And I don't think they're going to be bringing back Universe 7's as Saiyans because maybe they're just like a lot more ruthless compared to Universe 6's. But going back to the origins of the Saiyans with Yamoshi and stuff like that, a lot of people were theorizing that the reason why that this movie may be taking place after the Tournament of Power and the whole Sadala arc that was supposed to be hinted for this afterwards anyway is because not only the amount of content that they could bring with this, it's also one really weird theory that I saw was like when Goku goes Ultra Instinct, you hear like a weird voice in the background, and maybe since he is a descendant of Yamoshi, they're gonna be making a correlation between the two.
That I really doubt. I mean, I understand like where you're coming from because of the connection aspect, but I just feel like Yamoshi has nothing to do with Goku being, you know, as he taps back into Ultra Instinct and whatnot, because Goku, that second voice that we heard, I think is just mainly for visuals and vocals. I don't think that it really had like a significant like impact as to like if he's being controlled or if there's like another spirit inside of him, even though I found it very interesting how all of a sudden Toriyama introduces the name of who this original Saiyan was, and further explaining the S cells that, you know, certain Saiyans carry in their abilities to transform further and getting stronger. I think that that's going to allude you know, into what we're going to see in this upcoming film. Do I think, in my personal opinion, Yamoshi has anything to do with Goku? No. But do I think that in this film we might get answers as to who he was and maybe his presence still being out there? Yes, because remember, in Battle of Gods, what was most interesting was when they asked Shenron, in both the arc and the movie, was when they asked Shenron about Yamoshi, or at least, you know, the original Super Saiyan God, you know, Shenron even said, I don't know what happened to him. He just disappeared. He vanished. So it would be very awesome, in my opinion, to see a confrontation between Yamoshi and Goku perhaps. But even looking at it from that standpoint, it's like Goku and Vegeta both at this current point have well beyond surpassed Super Saiyan God. And to our knowledge, you know, even though Yamoshi was the original Super Saiyan God, what more can a Super Saiyan God do against a Super Saiyan Blue, and if anything an Ultra Instinct kind of like power? You know, I understand like visually it would be amazing to see a Super Saiyan God versus a Super Saiyan God. I just feel like two things might come about in this upcoming film. Either A, we might get a definitive introduction to Yamoshi and him, you know, introducing himself, and we might get, as you just said, a movie similar to Broly to where they fight Yamoshi, or we might not even see Yamoshi at all, but instead, we might get a different antagonist come about to where he challenges the Saiyans, similar to Frieza, in trying to eradicate them, maybe, perhaps. But what I also wanted to ask you is, as we go into this film, do you think that we're going to see Vegeta perhaps teaching these Saiyans from planet Sadala how to transform into Super Saiyans, you know, pretty much allowing Vegeta to be more expressive with his pride, because he was very expressive with Kaba about Saiyan pride, about having that, you know, pride within him to fight and represent his people, as we saw during the Champa arc when, you know, Kaba was very unaware with what Super Saiyan even was until Vegeta said, listen, you are a Saiyan, you know, you have a lineage and a heritage to uphold. So I feel like as we go into this film, you know, more information will drop next month in March, but as we go into this film, I personally believe that we are going to see a scenario to where we may see an antagonist appear to where he might be God level perhaps, because again, depending on time placements, we're talking about this taking place after Super. So if it does take place after Super, you're going to have to introduce a villain, at least for Goku and Vegeta's sake, that can rival them in power. So in terms of like villains, what kind of a villain do you see coming about? Is it Yamoshi? Is it going to be a different, you know, enemy, like entirely, like perhaps maybe a deity or some other villain that approaches that, you know, challenges their power? Since we are only talking about this taking place after Super, not before or during, how do you see this coming about if this were to be an enemy that takes place or at least is introduced after Super? Like, who do you think, or what do you think it would be if that were to be the case?
Well, in terms of like what I'm picturing with this movie, having not knowing anything besides it being the origins of the Saiyans, what I'm getting like a clear visual in my head is like combine the Bardock movie with Broly. That's what I'm seeing, like a planet full of Saiyans, and they're gonna end up going there, and like combine those two concepts, and then maybe a foe comes out of nowhere. Now, the thing that they left in Super that could have had so much more depth to it, besides them just exploring planet Sadala, is that there's still other universes that didn't enter the Tournament of Power, and there's still strong fighters out there, and there could still be very well villains from those Tournament of Power. I mean, that didn't enter the Tournament of Power, that could be ending up coming into conflict with this particular universe. You never know if there's somebody out there, God tier, that's still like in the midst out there that may even take on anybody in this tournament coming towards Sadala. So it might not be Yamoshi, it might just be somebody random from out there that we don't know about, never heard about. But the fact of the matter is that they did bring up the SLs, Yamoshi, and maybe even Jiren back in the day. So those could all go to fault. They might not even use that in this movie, but a foe has to come out of nowhere, and it's a planet full of Saiyans that potentially have a lot of hidden energy within them, because now that they've mastered going Super Saiyan from these just these few warriors from there, you never know how many Super Saiyans just lying on this planet.
Yeah, and look at Kale and Caulifla. They were able to literally break limits in not only achieving Super Saiyan 1 and Super Saiyan 2 at the exact same time, but also we saw what Kale was able to do with her Berserker power. So we don't really know if there are other Saiyans that can do that. But let me ask you, so what if this film does take place way before Super? Like, we're talking about like ancient times, because if you're planning on introducing the most amount of Saiyans that we've ever seen before, do you think it's possible for us to see kind of like a Lord Chilled kind of scenario to where it even predates Frieza, an enemy that predates what we know now of, like, you know, the gods and whatnot? So do you see an enemy, you know, being introduced similar to how we got introduced to Chilled, to where there was an entity back in the day to challenge the Saiyans, and the Saiyans had no other option or no other choice but to fight back? Because I could see that coming about, or we could see the war that happened with Yamoshi and the Saiyans that he fought against, because he needed the power of 5 righteous-hearted Saiyans for him to transition and become a Super Saiyan God, in which it led to him defeating them, but then all of a sudden he disappeared. So what if this were to take place way before Super, way before Dragon Ball Z? What kind of a situation or scenario do you see stemming out of that?
I was picturing a Lord Chill type of movie, but at the same time, I think they'd be wasting their potential with the movie because it has to star Goku and Vegeta for them to get the most amount of sales.
Yes.
So maybe it might start off with the origins of the Saiyans way back then, and then they would have to fast forward to now where some foe from back then survived and he's coming back to take vengeance upon the Saiyans once again. But I really think they would be missing or dropping the ball with sales in terms of not having Goku and Vegeta on the front of the poster, regardless of anything. If you're not keeping it in somewhat of the present day, they're going to be missing out. I mean, the Lord Chilled movie, don't get me wrong, I love the animation in that, and I like them bringing back Bardock, but I don't think they would be getting the most out of it with all of the hype from Super and these two particular characters just going back in time and not fast forwarding to now. I think it's gonna have to, if it does go back in time, involve a foe from the past that was super strong and he returns in present day. Otherwise,
now, do you also see, in your opinion, do you see Kaba, Kale, and Caulifla being involved in this film? Again, depending on the time placement after the Tournament of Power, because for those of you who are still unaware, Dragon Ball Super is ending on March 25th. Episode 131 is the final episode. And with that being said, we don't really know what the ending is going to be, but we have an understanding that it might reach the end of Z, and then we're gonna, just call it quits from there. Do you see Kaba, Kale, and Caulifla, being also, brought into this film to team up with Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, perhaps whoever else they have paired up? Because what I found interesting about what you just said is, yes, I think that they need to include Goku, Vegeta, even though they don't have to. I mean, as we saw with the Bardock film, they don't have to give you those characters, but more or less, I think for marketing, it would be a smart decision for them to include Goku, Vegeta, and said Saiyans. But what is the likelihood of us seeing other Saiyans aside from the current ones that we saw or are seeing currently in Dragon Ball Super? Do you think that would be a good marketing focus point to where they focused more on other people aside from the current characters that we have? Or do you see Goku and Vegeta indefinitely being in this film? And if so, since they're involved, do you see also Kaba, Kale, and Caulifla being involved as well, since they are a part of the Saiyan heritage?
I see all of them being involved, but Goku and Vegeta have to be in here. If it involves Saiyans and it's going to be like a worldwide movie release, has to be Goku and Vegeta on that poster, no matter what. With Kaba, Kale, and Caulifla, they're definitely going to have to be introduced if they're going to Planet Sadala, because they were like Vegeta's underlings. They had a bond with these characters, and for them to introduce a new foe that's going to be worthy of the challenge, if this does take place after the Tournament of Power, it's going to have to be stronger than Goku or maybe Vegeta, or especially Kale with that berserker power. They have to introduce something that can beat that down as well, and they're going to have to come together and just figure out what the new threat is going to be, and have something that's gonna like match up with the power scaling, if anything. But I think it would be kind of wrong for them to leave these three characters out, especially Kaba, because of the bond that he has with Vegeta.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine that? Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Goten, Trunks, possibly future Trunks, he is a Saiyan. We have Kaba, Kale, Caulifla. Imagine everybody together. I mean, because they went on a limb to say that this is going to feature the most amount of Saiyans that we've ever seen before. Now, we don't really know what they mean by that. Perhaps maybe this includes just regular, casual Joe Schmoes that are residing on certain planets. But I think that visually, it would be so orgasmic to see all of these Saiyans stand side by side, since they were fighting each other in the tournament, now having to work together to fight off a common enemy. So any final thoughts about this upcoming film before we go, in terms of like how you feel about the film, what you expect to see, and just your overall hypeness behind it? Because we haven't seen a movie since Resurrection of F. So any final thoughts going into the 2018 film before we go?
Well, what I have in mind here is, remember in Resurrection F when they had the army attack everyone in the animation qual?
Yes.
I mean, we've seen a bunch of people from Planet Vegeta get blown up by Frieza. That was a lot of people on screen. I'm not sure if they were all saying some are aliens and stuff like that. But with that being said, I would hope that they have like a few new characters that they can put the spotlight on, if there's going to be a lot of Saiyans in this movie, like some new Saiyans other than the ones that we just were introduced to in the Tournament of Power. And if there is going to be like an army of Saiyans, at least have a few that we can get like an attachment to, because if there's too many, there's just not going to be that attachment that we have with the three that were featured. And that's just what I want to see, honestly. Just give me some new Saiyans that are just as cool as Kale was with the Berserker form, something on that level, not just like little tiny student prepubescent type of fighters. But hopefully this movie comes out and it features Goku Vegeta after the Super arc with Tournament of Power, and hopefully we get some more information onto what the origins of the Saiyans really was.
I really do have high hopes for this film, because With this movie having to drop in December, it's literally a shocker because nobody really expected to see the confirmation of a new movie, at least so soon, and within the span of a year, ever since December of 2017, we had information that this film will be dropping, and now we're getting ever so closer until the debut of this film, and I really cannot wait to see, you know, where the origins of these Saiyans do stem from. Hopefully not, you know, they don't really incorporate some sort of like a midichlorian story, where they were like designed, you know, genetically by, you know, some sort of superior race that engineered them or something like that. You never really know, but in the end, guys, post your comments down below as to what you guys think about the upcoming movie. What are your overall expectations and thoughts for that? Let us know down below, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys are new to this channel, hit that subscribe button, guys. Turn on all notifications. Tune back in for more, and we'll be seeing you all in the next Dragon Ball video. Cue my outro, bitch.